Welcome back to Rewind of the Living Dead. I'm Vampire Damon.
And I'm insufferable podcast co-host Patrick Guerra.
And Patrick, tonight we are kind of swerving off to the left or right, depending on how you want to look at it, into a smaller, more independent horror film opening this week, actually. So we're right on time. A new film by Spider-One, who we have talked about on this podcast before, the lead singer of Powerman 5000, a band I absolutely adore. And of course, he also did movies like Allegoria, which we reviewed on this show, Little Bites, he's done a couple other things, and his new film, Big Baby.
That's right, Damon. It's time to do a little bit of indie horror here on Rewind of the Living Dead, and we love to support our indie horror creators. And Big Baby was released, or is released now, in August of 2026, starring the likes of Kate Freund as Patrice, Adam Marcinowski as Big Baby, Torio Van Grohl as James, Chrissy Fox as Kate, and starring Brandon Scott as Adam Lewis, written and directed by Spider-One. A successful horror screenwriter, Adam struggles for inspiration until a terrifying nightmare about a masked killer sparks an idea for his new script. As he delves deeper into the story, the line between reality and fiction begins to blur. Damon, yes, we are talking Big Baby, our second Spider-One movie. We actually had plenty of good things to say about Allegoria. Yeah, Spider-One kind of lives in the more independent indie horror space, and we love to support that when we can. Big shout out, by the way, to I think it's Pixel Scene Media who hooked us up with our screener so we could talk about it early, so we could get people hyped for it. Because yes, Damon, I know we talk about the bigger giant releases for horror, but truth be told, there's plenty of horror being released all the time. And we were fans of Allegoria, so we wanted to check out Spider-One's latest, Big Baby.
Yeah, and I'm a fan of Spider-One in general as a person. Like obviously I mentioned, he's the lead singer of Powerman 5000. I think it's well documented. He's the younger brother of Rob Zombie, who is one of my favorite horror directors and musicians for that matter. I'm a big Rob Zombie fan. But yeah, so Spider-One, he's doing his own thing. He's doing his own thing, making his own movies, kind of following in the family footsteps of what his brother Rob Zombie has done. And this is his, I believe, fifth movie, if I'm not mistaken. He's done like 4 or 5 movies now. And his wife, who is one of the main stars of the movie, Chrissy Fox, she's one of the main stars of this movie. She's an actor, and so he's put her in a lot of his movies, and she does an incredible job as well. But yeah, so just as the person goes, I like Spider-One. Now here's something I learned reading up on this movie last night when it sold. I think it was like back in February. It sold in like the Berlin Film Fan Fest or something like that. Cher is one of the major producers of his movies, not just this one. Like she's produced all of his movies. Now I'd be infinitely curious to know how that connection got made. I know that Cher's son is in this movie. I know that. That's true. But yeah, I saw a little story. I think it was on Variety, and I was like, Cher? And he's like, Cher's produced his last like 3 movies. I was like, what? So I would be infinitely curious to talk to Spider-One and be like, how in the world did you meet and become friends with Cher to where she's producing your? It's just such a random thing.
And she doesn't just slap her name on these movies. She like has a say in them. Like I saw a quick interview with Chrissy Fox about this movie, and she's like, yeah, she gave us some great notes on it, and she said, let's try. She had produced the last one for them, Little Bites, and she goes, let's do another one. This time, more blood. That was Cher's request. And I was like, what the fuck? How does all this work out in Hollywood land? I'd really like to know. Maybe Spider-One or Chrissy can tell us one of these days. Chrissy, very sweet. I bumped into her at the premiere of Strange Darling, and she was like, oh, Rewind of the Living Dead. I know you guys. And I was like, oh, that's fucking cool. Like, I don't know how Chrissy Fox knows us, but she knows us. And that's rad. And we know Chrissy Fox and we know Spider-One, and we follow along with this group, and that's cool. Damon, to talk about tonight's movie is to talk about Allegoria for just a moment, because in the end credits of, or well, not in the end credits, but a little piece of Allegoria, they made like a little joke movie in it. And it was called, I think the movie itself was called Big Baby. And it was kind of a silly little nod to people watching horror movies in Allegoria. And it was about a guy in a baby suit killing a bunch of women. And I guess that struck a chord with people, and they kept asking them, when and where are we getting the Big Baby movie? And they were like, oh, you guys really want that? And they're like, yeah, we do really want that. And Spider-1 and Chrissy saying, well, if they want a slasher, we'll give them a slasher. But they didn't want to make a goofy, silly, campy slasher. They wanted to make something that had some meat on its bones, for lack of a better term. And they came up with Big Baby, which to me, Damon, speaks directly to me as an independent filmmaker. And I would assume it would speak directly to you as a writer because it's about the creative process. And I really felt like this was Spider-1 kind of spilling his guts to the fans and being like, here's what it's like creating for a living, and here's why it's so difficult. And he did that for years as a musician. He's doing it now as a filmmaker. Creativity can be a nightmare, Damon.
So to give you a little plot detail on this one, and by the way, this does not ruin the movie. This is literally just laying out for you like the very beginning of the movie. We meet this writer who just had a movie come out recently, and he's listening to the movie. I was listening to a review of a podcast reviewing his movie. And by the way, the podcast, what you hear in the trailer goes, "Be warned, spoilers are ahead." And I'm like, oh God, is this like are they using us as like a now, by the way, the podcast in the movie is nothing like our podcast.
No.
They do movie reviews, and he's listening to the movie review of his most recent movie, what was it, The Blackest? What was it called? The Blackest?
Oh God, I can't remember.
Anyways, they're just crucifying it. Like the podcasters are saying things like he should just go kill himself. Like they're really they're really amateur, like really just like, the things you would never hear us say. We would never tell you, like, well, we joke maybe about some stuff. We definitely don't be serious. They were being serious. And he's obviously letting it get to him. And he's telling his girlfriend about it. He's like, this is just, they hate it, whatever. And so he's convinced he needs to come up with a newer, better idea for his next project after they just absolutely crucified him. And by the way, this is one podcast. It's not like the entire world hated this movie, but clearly these two podcasters who in this world have a very popular horror movie review podcast hated his movie with like a fiery passion. And so he's allowing that to sink into his psyche as far as that goes. And now he's convinced he needs to come up with a better idea for his next movie. I think that's the simplest way to lay out the plot of this movie. And here we are going to get deep into the whole like critical analysis, toxic fandom, toxic reviewers. We're going to talk about that and how I have a little bit of commentary on how this movie portrays it, and I understand it. Maybe getting a little bit of your anger out there, Spider-1. But here's what I will say about the creative process, and I'm saying this in my role as a creator, not as a reviewer. I'm saying this as a guy who's a writer. I'm a professional writer, not pat myself in the back. I'm just saying, just recently got nominated for Journalist of the Year, so I have some credentials to back up what I'm saying here. I never, ever read comments. We had kind of an, I won't say an edict at work. We had a thing at work we're trying to like drive more engagement with fans. And my boss was like, hey, could you, I was like, no, I'm not doing it. I was like, it's a mental health thing. I was like, I'll go and do other people's stories and reply and have conversations and whatever, like an open conversation. But my stories, you're never going to get me to go because it's a mental health thing. I know it's going to wreck me because I've done it by accident on YouTube. And they're like, oh, this guy's ugly, or why does he say this, or why does he wear glasses? I'm like, how the fuck does any of this have anything to do with what I was saying in my video? But just because I look weird or you don't like the toys behind me, I have no idea. But it fucked with me. I was thinking about it for like a day straight. Like, oh man, they're really insulting this or that, and I'm like, I can't do this. So yeah. I never. Now I understand when you become a filmmaker, it's impossible to ignore that stuff, you know what I mean? Like, you literally cannot, if you're making, and granted, not everyone's making Spider-Man Brand New Day, where it's like the biggest movie opening, second biggest movie opening in history. But even in I'm sure in Spider-1's case, like, he's not going to avoid everything, you know what I mean? Because you're a filmmaker. It's hard to do that. But that's my advice, man. Ignore, like, don't do it, man. Like, it's one thing to get critical analysis. Like, you and I have read each other's scripts and given each other feedback. And I know, like, when you first give it to me, like, damn, that kind of stings. But I'm like, but it's coming from a good place. And I'm sure I hope you've taken that same advice when I've done that to you. But you and I care about each other. We care about our projects. We know it's coming from a good place. when some random YouTuber, some random YouTube commenter is like, "Oh, this idea fucking sucks, and you are a terrible writer, and you have no talent." I take that with a grain of salt because, hey, I just made something. You didn't. Like, you're not making something. So that's why I'm just getting, like, my long drawn out point here is like, don't read the comments. Don't listen to podcasts like this if you're that, like, if you can't handle the criticism. You know what I mean? Like, it's what, like, I'll take constructive criticism. I absolutely will. They're like, hey man, like, have you tried this, or why didn't you ask this question in an interview? And I'm like, I'll take that kind of constructive criticism. I don't need you to be like, man, that interview fucking sucked and you're ugly. Well, I don't know what that does for me. And that's kind of what happens in this movie. These guys are just like, the podcasters at the beginning of this movie, they're just like, man, this movie was awful. This is like the worst movie ever. Oh my God, this was terrible. It was all bad, 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 bad. Man, this was so poorly written. Who's the writer? What is it, Andrew or whatever it is? He's like, oh,
Adam Lewis. Yeah.
Adam Lewis, he should kill himself. Now, none of that tells you anything about why they actually dislike this movie or what's wrong with it or what they think is wrong with it. So that's like, this movie basically portrays the reviewers, and I'm not defending it, I'm just saying this movie portrays the reviewers as YouTube commenters. And Adam, our character, really takes offense to it.
I mean, you can tell that Adam is definitely a surrogate for Spider-1. And Spider-1, by the way, been dealing with this long before he was making movies, because he was also a musician. And believe you me, back then when he was making it, there was a thing that's probably still around, message boards, right? I don't know how popular they are anymore, but they were real popular when his music was popular.
And he had it worse because he's Rob Zombie's younger brother. That news gets out there, and that's like 10 times worse.
Right. And you really are relying as a more independent artist on word of mouth. And what I felt like Spider-1 was talking about with using this composite, or this podcast as a composite for people who review his stuff, he was to say, like, wow, man, like, your negativity is what drives your stuff. Now, it doesn't apply to the folks at Rewind and Living Dead, because we don't really play that game. As a filmmaker myself, I'm like, there's maybe been like a handful of times where I've really gone in on a movie here. And even then, I still try to contextualize it as best I can. But some movies have frustrated me to no end, and I air my grievances. But what I'm never doing is attacking the filmmaker. I'm never attacking them specifically and saying, you suck as a person, you're a terrible person, blah, blah, blah. I've never done that. There might have been one time way long ago, Damon, when we were still finding our legs as a podcast. And I'm not proud of that, by the way, because I don't actually really want to detract anybody from seeing a movie. I think our goal here on this podcast is we want people to see movies. I want you to see Big Baby and tell me what you thought of it. I want the engagement. I want us to get talking about stuff because it's good for people to talk about movies. But what we don't do at Rewind and Living Dead is we don't deal in negativity as our currency. A lot of people do. It works out really well for a lot of people to just say, this is a sack of shit and I hate it. And their crowd loves it. And maybe we'd be a bigger name in horror if we did that, but we don't. And you're a writer, so you understand too. And you always give the benefit of the doubt. You grade on curves, you contextualize, because all of that stuff matters. But guess what? Most people don't give a shit about that. They just want to know, did the movie suck? That's all I care about. I had somebody in, my social media is kind of growing a little bit. And I had someone say, well, it sounds like you didn't like the movie, so I'm definitely not going to see it. Boy, did I dive right to that comment and go, please go see it and tell me if I'm wrong or not. I never want anyone to have the impression that I don't want them to see movies. It's the opposite of that. So when I see Spider do that with those podcasters, he's taking out frustration on all the negative people. He 100%, he's like, why do you have to be fucking negative about it? And the character of Adam, 100%, he's an exaggerated version. I doubt Spider is truly this extreme. He lets every little thing get to him. He's got this great girlfriend in Kate, played by Chrissy Fox, who's actually really supportive of what he does. But she'll say something just the wrong way, and he takes it way too far. And he's like, oh, so you're saying I suck, or you're saying I'll never win an Oscar because of the kind of movies I make. Really? Like, he's so very obsessed with praise. He wants praise, and he's not quite getting it. That in and of itself, intentional or not, is a bit infantile. No pun intended, right? We're talking about Big Baby here, but if as an artist you only want praise, only, you haven't matured yet as an artist. When I was a young artist, all I wanted to hear was that I did a good job. I didn't want to hear anything else. Now I realize, oh, if I get criticism, constructive criticism, it helps build and make me better each time out. I'm actually looking forward to it. When I get back notes where somebody goes, "Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, I can't wait to see how it shakes out." I go, "Fuck, that was a waste of time." I need to know what's wrong with it so I can make it better. That's now all I care about. And so for Adam, he's really still stuck, even though he's a successful screenwriter. Kate says as much, like, "Oh, you make your living doing this. What's the problem?" He
Yeah.
can't get over the hump that people don't immediately praise his stuff. And I think at least on some level, Spider is criticizing Adam because of that. He's not saying like, "Oh yeah, like that's how I Spider One also feel like you should only be praising my stuff." He's saying, "Don't get caught in that trap." And Damon, that trap is a real thing in this movie, and it becomes something that consumes Adam. And I've heard comparisons to like The Shining with Jack and The Shining. You know, Jack's a frustrated writer, and so there's a little bit of that going on here too, where he's frustrated that he can't get something great onto the page because he believes he has to be great every time out, and that in and of itself, Damon, is a killer.
Well, there's a dangerous game you play as a creator in that situation where it's like I'm kind of the opposite as a writer. I'm self-critical. I read an article I wrote like 8 years ago. I'm like, oh my god. I was like, did I go to school? Do I know how to write a sentence? So I'm self-critical. I'm my own worst critic. You know what I mean? Now, like I said, when I got nominated for Journalist of the Year, did I appreciate that? Yeah, it's a little self-validating. Like it's like, yeah, I did something
Sure.
cool. Like I appreciate that. Uh, but it's a dangerous game. Like I said, like I don't live by praise. I don't need people to praise me constantly. Actually, like I said, there's been plenty of years where I didn't get nominated for Journalist of the Year, and I didn't really get offended by it. I was like, hey, I know I do a good job, and the people who work with me and the people who've been around me know. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm a dependable dude. Like, I can call, certain, like, when I call people and like, oh, I know who you are. I will talk to you or I will give you an interview because you've done it, you've been around, whatever. You've earned that reputation. That's what I care about more than awards and, pat me on the back and shit. But it's a dangerous game because I know exactly what you're talking about. The guy or the girl who constantly needs praise to do their job. And what's funny is, and I think this is where Adam's character, where he writes his character, and that's, kind of the point of like being an extreme character one way or the other, is that Adam is literally, the movie opens with him talking about his new movie that just came out. He did the damn thing.
Yeah.
Like, you and I, who hope to do the damn thing one day, would be, I think, at this stage in our careers, would be over the freaking moon to have a movie in the world where people can see it, whether it's VOD or in the theater, whatever. Sure. But this guy doesn't appreciate what he's got because a couple of snot-nosed asshole podcasters are like, this sucks, it's terrible, it's the worst movie I've ever seen, blah, blah, blah. It reminds me, have you ever seen, did you ever watch The Newsroom on HBO?
Yeah, I wasn't devout, but yeah, I followed it.
One of my favorite shows, Aaron Sorkin writer, incredible show. The final episode, they've had their news studio, their newsroom has been taken over. Like they're now working for like a new version, like almost like an Elon Musk. We need to drive engagement. We need to whatever. And so the guy's now running the website that the news guy, the guy who's like a hardcore news person, took over and rebuilt and made it like a really trustworthy site you could go to depend on news. These new people have come in and now they're just making shit to piss people off, which is this podcast we're talking about from the show. And they're like, let's do a list of the 10 most overrated movies of all time. And they start with number 1, which is Avatar. And like every movie they're naming is like from the last like 9 years. And they're like, of all time, but you're naming movies only from the last like 5-6 years or whatever it is. And the guy comes in and he's just like, so you've decided that you want to make a list of the worst movies ever made, or the most overrated movies ever made, sorry. And your movies start with Avatar, which at that point I think had been out for like a year. And he's like, that's your gauge. That's where you're starting at. And he's like, he's like, just take, like, he takes the entire website offline. And he's just like, I'm ashamed of you. Like, I'm ashamed that you did this. And they just start over. It reminds me of that because, like, there's no new, like, listen, you talked about, like, you never go after people personally. Listen, me and David Gordon Green, we're just on side if we ever run into each other. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
you
Like, I
two
mean,
have real beef that I don't know how to fix.
yeah,
As a great mediator myself, I'm like, I don't know how we're going to get this done.
yeah, but even go back and listen. My Halloween Ends review, which you all know is one of my least favorite movies ever made on film. I don't just say it sucks and I hate it. I give you plenty of reasons. We talked for like 2 hours why that movie doesn't work.
It's an
For
epic
us.
podcast.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites, even though it was like emotionally taxing. But we don't just say there's, oh, it sucks, it's the worst movie ever made. Now, well, David Gordon Green should go kill himself. I would never. That's not, you know. I joke like we're gonna fight, and I dislike that guy, but really, it's just joking. And I think everyone who's listened to podcast more than one episode probably knows that. But a great example of that was our new review we did last week on Her Private Hell, which is just a very weird movie that didn't work for either one of us. So we're just like, I'm still trying to wrap my head around what the fuck I saw. I put up a post on TikTok, and our friend who we know who does great reviews on there as well, Oriana and Nichelle. She does incredible reviews in her own right. She left a comment. She's like, "There's so many people talking about this movie. I feel like I need to go see it because like so many people like just really don't like this movie." And I literally left a comment and said, "No, I encourage you to go see it."
Yeah,
because
I want to know what Oriana thinks.
You may have a totally different opinion than what I did. We actually said that in our review, like, go see it and like tell us what you got out of it because I have no idea what I got out of it. But these podcasters on this movie kind of take that newsroom approach where they're like, oh, the 10 worst movies ever made, and it starts with Avatar, which at the time came out 2 years ago. These guys are not, there's no nuance, but on the flip side, you got Adam, who is taking everything to the nth degree.
Yes.
He's not looking at the fact that he just had a freaking movie come out. We never get the full detail of like where it came out, how big it was, whatever. But he has a movie out in the world to where people can actually watch it and review it, and his response is this one negative review. So it's almost like, you know, it's like very polarizing opposites, but they're both going in the same direction in a weird way. You got podcasters who are not being nuanced with their review. They're just saying, oh, this movie sucks. And then you got Adam, who's like, he doesn't take it to heart. At first, he's like, oh, my movie's so much better than this. It's so much more nuanced. You didn't get it. But obviously it's getting to him because he's like listening to it obsessively. And so that gets to Adam, and then Adam is convinced, like, I need to come up with a newer, better idea for my next film. And that's really the crux of where this movie starts, when he starts coming up with the idea for his next film. And the idea originally comes from like a nightmare in his head where he sees this killer in a baby mask with an axe, and it comes after him, and it eventually comes after his girlfriend, gets in their house. And he wakes up and he's in a cold sweat. He's like, oh my God, feels so real. And then he looks down and there's a cut on the blanket where he thought it killed his girlfriend, which it didn't, obviously. But he's like, what the fuck? And so his reality starts bleeding. His nightmares start bleeding into reality, his reality. And that's where his idea comes from, the script, and that's kind of the jumping off point of this movie. But had to talk about the reviewers because clearly it was a big part of the opening of this movie.
Yeah, I think it's a big part of the whole movie. I think thematically it's a massive part of the movie. And there are creatives like that who it's like they can have a bunch of success sitting right in front of them, like Adam does. They can have a really great and supportive girlfriend like Kate, who is incredible to him. And he's like literally brushing her off like, I don't even give a shit because now I'm so focused that I need to get back at these guys. I can only focus on the negative comments. I can't take stock of the good things that I have. And so he lets that madness take hold. And Damon, I don't know. I feel like this is one where we can start getting into spoilers pretty quick too, because on one side it is a psychological movie, and on the other side it's a straight up slasher. And I do think Spider-1 intended for those two to balance out. And, you know, we got to get into how that all shakes out pretty soon.
And let me give one little quick last non thing before we get into spoilers, or non spoiler thing before we get into spoilers for people who are going to go see this, because we're going to put this review out a couple days before Big Baby actually releases in the theaters. I'll say this: I've talked a lot this year as the guy who adores slasher movies. Grew up, it's my favorite genre in horror. And I've said over and over and over in 2026, are we just too sophisticated for the old school slashers? Like just the classic, something wrong happened to this person. They come back and they want revenge against the people who wronged them. That's just the most classic slasher formula ever made. And I feel like we've kind of, I was like, have we kind of outgrown it? Like, have we kind of, like, we need more sophisticated stories now because it doesn't work. I'll give credit. Like, I was watching Big Baby last night and I was like, credit to Spider-One. Like this is kind of what I'm talking about. Like it's a slasher movie kinda, but they take a newer approach into the way into it. And I was like, maybe me and Spider-One drink from the same trough or something, because I think he had kind of a similar thought. Like the classic, just making a straight up slasher probably doesn't work as well in 2026. But if you add in a little different wrinkle, a little different way into the story, in this case, we're literally dealing with a screenwriter who is creating the killer we're seeing in our movie. And that reality blending with, fantasy and all of it kind of working together and like what's real, what's not. I was like, this is actually a pretty creative way into this story. And I was like, wow, like this is what I'm talking about. Like you want to make a slasher. You're a slasher fan. How do we get in there again? How do we get to the cheese? And Spider-One is like, here's a little different approach. And I was like, yeah, I dig this. So there's a lot to like about it. I'm not being serious. There's a lot to like about Big Baby. Now, do I have criticisms? Do I think there's issues with this movie? Sure, we'll get into that more in spoilers. But I'm being honest and saying, like, if you like slasher movies and you watch like the new I Know What You Did Last Summer, and you're like, God, this feels so formulaic. I've seen, this just feels like this is like a cash grab, or Scream 7 for God's sake, which was terrible. And by the way, I'm not saying that in like a one nuanced sentence of this sucks, it's the worst movie ever made. Go back and listen to our full review. You'll find out why we didn't like that movie. But like, if you're watching those movies and you're like, this just feels like the same thing rehashed. I just watched this. Like, I just saw something like this before. Where's anything new? Credit to Spider-One. Big Baby is a slasher movie with new ideas.
It really is.
So with that being said, Patrick, let's get into spoilers. So if you haven't seen Big Baby, or you're going to see Big Baby this weekend, pause the episode, come back and listen to us afterwards. Big Baby is opening in theaters on August 7th, I believe. So go check it out, and I'm sure it'll be on streaming shortly thereafter. And also, if you want early access to this episode or any episode, make sure you check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/rewind of the living dead. We are actually putting this episode out the week of release, which is later than we normally put on an episode because we were getting a screener, and technically this movie doesn't come out for 5 days, but or 2 days by the time this podcast drops. But yeah, go to Patreon. You can listen to this early, and obviously we put everything up early. So we got a very busy August coming up. The new Insidious movie coming out, Ice Cream Man, the new Eli Roth movie's coming out. So stay tuned for all that. Make sure you check us out, patreon.com/rewind of the living dead. But Patrick, let's get into full spoilers. And we've already kind of talked about the plot of kind of this obsessive writer who's now determined he has to make an even better script after these two asshole little podcasters, which there's a great scene in the coffee shop. He's in the coffee shop with his girlfriend getting coffee. He's getting the coffee to go, and he hears these two guys talking. He looks over and he's like, oh my God, it's them. And he goes over and he tries to have a kind of a conversation with them, not telling them what it is. And then eventually he reveals who he is. And he chucks coffee in their face, which is perfectly not the reaction you should have in that situation. You should never assault people because they have a different opinion than you. But that's what Adam does. And then, like I said, Adam starts working on this script, and he's kind of drawing from his own nightmares, his own visions of this killer called Big Baby. And that's really where our kicking off point of where the real, meat and the bones of the story take off.
Yeah, he has this pretty insane what he believes is like a hallucination, or he thinks it's real at first, which is, oh, after I had that nightmare, I was out and I followed this woman down an alley and saw her get chopped up by Big Baby. It really happened, and it traumatizes him. I mean, he's like fully freaked out about it. He's like, it really happened. And Kate is like, it didn't happen. You are under a lot of stress. You've really let that criticism get to your head, and you're trying to write this new thing and you're trying to make it the best thing ever. Like, you are spiraling. And I feel like, again, that's another situation where it's like Spider-One's probably been in that situation at some point in his life where he was going way too far with something, and someone in his life was like, you are spiraling, which is exactly what she's telling him. And he's like, nope, I'm going to take you, I'm going to show you. She was right over here, she was killed. And then they go there, of course there's nothing. And so she's like, wow, okay, you really do need to take a break from this. Instead, he's just doubling down, but not for no reason. Big Baby appears to him very clear as day and says, if you don't write this thing, I'm coming for her and I'm going to take her out. Now, us as the audience, we get to go like, is that really Big Baby saying that, or is there something inside Adam that is telling him to do that? Is he breaking with reality? And that's the thing that I think Spider-One really tries to play with, is like, are we breaking with reality here because we're letting the stress of creativity and the stress of outside negativity and noise get into our heads and create something that we can't control anymore. You talk about not answering comments to help with your mental health. That's a very real thing. I mean, my God, I've done quite a few videos on the Odyssey. Some of the most vile fucking comments, and I just straight up delete them. I don't even play. I don't need that kind of engagement on my page. So a lot of them, they're just getting deleted. If I miss one, I miss one. But there's like hundreds of comments, and some of them are really, really awful. If you get into battles with people like that every single day, it is eventually going to wear on your psyche. In Big Baby, we accelerate that to just like, I got this terrible negative review. I'm very neurotic about my work, and I'm trying to create something now that even these shitheads over here at Rewind of the Living Dead are going to say is great. I'm just kidding. I think they know that Rewind of the Living Dead is a fair and balanced podcast. But yeah, so he's spiraling, and so you're not sure if Big Baby is really telling him, you must finish this script or I will kill her, or is this all in his head? We don't know which is which.
And everything in this movie is done through Adam's point of view. So you're not sure either, because you're watching, like when you mentioned, when he goes to the convenience store to pick up some beer, and he sees this girl and he just kind of like randomly watches her, and she picks up a pack of smokes and she heads outside, and he's like, decides to follow her. Why? I don't know. He just gets this itch in his head where he's like, I need to follow this girl. And then sure enough, she goes in the alley and Big Baby shows up and axes her to death. And he freaks out, of course. That's where he runs back and tells Kate. We're watching this happen, so we're seeing the girl get hacked to pieces or whatever. But we're living kind of in the same world where it's like, is this real? Is this reality?
There's like a Nightmare on Elm Street element.
Yeah, very much so. And Adam keeps, they're getting more and more visceral, so they're getting more and more real, and obviously more and more disturbing as he's writing this script. And then, as you said, the actual Big Baby is like, you need to work on this script, because in the story, a little boy visits him in one of his dreams and says, I was Big Baby. I was a little kid. I was scared of the water. Kids pushed me in, and I almost drowned, had brain damage, and then I want my revenge for those kids who were mocking me and laughing at me in the pool. Which, that sounds very formulaic. That sounds very Friday the 13th or whatever. It's in a world of modern day slashers, that's just a very generic slasher story. A kid got booted into a pool. He couldn't get out. No one saved him. They were all mocking him and laughing at him. And sure enough, he stayed in there too long and he got brain damage. And now he's, years later, he wants his revenge. That sounds like, I'm sure there is probably a slasher story out there with almost that exact plot. So that part rings true as far as what a slasher story is. But as time goes on, Big Baby, the grown-up Big Baby, is like, I want my revenge on the people who did this to me, and if I don't kill them, then I'm going to kill someone close to you, which is Kate. And so Adam's like, I got to get to work on the script. And so he starts working on the script, and he starts, mapping out the characters and revenge for Big Baby, how Big Baby gets his mask, all that kind of stuff. And I think what this movie does so well is it just shows like how, because at the beginning, when Adam starts working on this script, he can't even come up with a name. Like he's just like, he's looking at the computer screen, he's talking to his buddy who used to be his writing partner in college, and he's like, I have this idea, but it's going nowhere. Like I'm not writing everything. I was supposed to write 10 pages today. I wrote Dick. Like he's just like struggling with it, and it's because Big Baby starts escalating his own murders and crimes in his head that Adam is almost like forced into writing more about Big Baby. And I think it says a lot about the creative process because you do live under that pressure. And I'm sure once again, this is like this to me feels like a very therapeutic story for Spider One because like I looked him up and I'm not trying to out him here. I'm not a young guy either by any stretch of imagination, but he's 57 and he's been in some form of creative arts since his early 20s. Like he was a musician for I remember when Power Man 5000 was huge. I mean, they're still a band, they're still around, they're still playing. But like I remember when this is what happens when worlds collide. That song was huge.
Yeah.
So like this is a guy who's been dealing with this critical analysis of every creative thing he's done since he's like for the last like 30 some odd years. So this movie feels a lot like therapeutic because I'm sure after that one Power Man 5000 album blew up, and I had it, I bought it, I remember when it came out. It blew up. Now you got to do the follow-up. And that probably is a lot of this, like where he's just like, I have no choice but to make an even better record. I got to create even better songs, write better hooks, better, whatever. It's going to be heavier. It's going to be this, it's going to be that. And that's a lot of pressure. You know what I mean? Like he didn't just have like they had one, like they were a pretty big band. They were playing with a lot. I mean, I saw them multiple times in concert. So like this feels like almost like a self-therapeutic movie for him in a way, like going through all he went through, because I'm sure, as I said, he came out day one, even before he did his first movie, he's Rob Zombie's little brother. It didn't take a lot of digging for people to figure that out. Now they're like, okay, now not only are you making your own music, you're going to be judged by your brother's music and his success, which is such a bullshit thing to do, but it's true. People do it. And so I think this is like him at some point, whether it was writing an album or writing a movie, where he kind of fell into this same trap. I have to believe that's true. Not to the point where he thinks there's like an actual manifestation of a killer going out and murdering people, but like the pressure of like, I need to write 10 pages today and I haven't written shit. And then it just keeps banging on you and banging on you and banging on you. And then at some point you almost kind of break down and you're like, and then he just starts, pouring out of you, good or bad. And in this case for Adam, it's like now, like the way he paints it in the movie, which is actually a pretty brilliant way to paint it. I don't have a choice. Because this thing is real. I think it's real. Doesn't matter whether it is real. He thinks it's real. Adam thinks this is a real manifestation of a killer coming for his girlfriend.
I put in my notes, I get the feeling that Spider-One hates writing. like it really is one of these things where I think he's trying to show through Adam that like when the pressure is on, you get testy and you get shitty. And that's a big risk in this movie because you're kind of hoping that Adam will turn a corner. And really, he just seems to be getting worse and worse with Kate, who is lovely to him, who's genuinely great to him. He succeeded. He found a great girlfriend. Like she's really, really good to him, and he's being worse and worse to her. So I think he's making a statement there. He's like, I've had it really good in my life, and I took a lot of good people for granted because I was so immersed in my process that I was actually treating other people in a shitty way. So to me, that's like it's very apparent there on screen. And then the second part of that too is, when inspiration strikes, I have to attack it. I have to, because I'm expected to be putting out more things. So I've got to go and do that. And the mania that goes with that, the pressure, as you talked about, that goes with that becomes maddening. And so what we get, my biggest criticism that I will level at this film is that I think it's very front heavy with that message. And it's almost too front heavy with that message. Like I started to understand the premise And there's a lot of back and forth with Kate and Adam going through that process together where he's just like, I'm sick of everybody and all their criticisms. And it's like, we do understand that. We can move on from that and get into the thing. The second half of the movie really becomes the slasher because he finally loses Kate. Kate is like, fuck this in a very smart way. He's really lost his shit one day. And she's just like, I'm packing up and leaving because this situation isn't safe. Again, she's a smart and sound person, so she does the right thing and she leaves. And that sends him into this big spiral, but that spiral includes I must finish the script because if Kate's going to get in the way of that, then she's in the sights of Big Baby and I can't have that. So he begins to start writing the script, and in real life, he believes is manifesting kills of all the people that he's writing in the script. So you start to go down this process of slashing a lot of people in the second half of the movie. My biggest criticism is I would have peppered that throughout. I would have like taken a break from the commentary of the creative crisis and have him write a scene, and in that scene somebody dies, and then build again some more stuff and then have another scene that he writes. Instead, it's sort of like we talk about all of the angst up front, and then the second half is all the kills and they have to happen at the end. So that's my biggest criticism is just basically how it's structured. I wouldn't really change the movie. I would just sprinkle those out to space it out a little bit. It feels a little lopsided in that respect.
It feels a little long because I was like, I texted you when I was watching this. I was like, I actually really like the concept, but it feels a little long because it's like an hour and 42 minutes. And I was like, I think this movie should have been an hour and 30, hour and 25.
Yeah, hour 30 probably worked.
And a lot of that is that opening, the back and forth about the criticism and the conversations he's having with Kate. And then when you get to the second half of the movie, when Adam is literally just like sitting in front of a computer, his face is bleeding because he cut himself, and now he's just like boom, typing away, and he's like almost like in a zombie state. And we're just watching him type out kill scenes of Big Baby getting revenge against people who wronged him. So there's one scene where it's a couple who's stuck at a bar because their car died. There's another one where it's a first date, a girl and a guy's on a first date. There's another one where it's a girl who's like begging for her life, which he had another interaction with her in his dreams where she's like, "You don't have to kill me." It's like it's almost like a book character is like, "You don't have to kill me. I don't need to die." And he's like, "Sorry, baby, you're gonna die because you wronged this kid, and so he's gonna kill you." Um, but it just turns into almost like a traditional slasher film, just with like intro night parking lot like you would see in a script, which was fun. I really enjoyed that, but it almost felt like you probably could have cut one of those out and peppered them throughout that second half of the story because it literally just stops and it becomes that for like a half hour of just the kill scenes. Now, the kill scenes are cool. You get a lot of blood and guts and the creative kills that very much feels like a Friday the 13th movie or Hatchet or whatever. It is cool. I dig that. It's cool. But I think it would have worked better, as you said, if they would have just peppered it out. Like he has the breakdown with Kate. There's the first scene. He comes back from that. She leaves him. The second scene, kind of pepper it out.
Yeah.
And like I said, I think you probably could have cut one of those out because there's just, and like I said, I think this movie could have done about 12 to 15 minutes of editing out and get it down to like an hour and 27, hour and 30 minutes. I think it would have worked a little bit better because there was a couple moments where I'm like, are we getting to the next exciting incident? But overall, like I said, the idea of Adam breaking down and reality is like it goes from like just a sheet of white wall, it is reality to like where it's like saran wrap where it's like wavy and you can kind of see through it and you're not sure what you're seeing. It's kind of warped because he doesn't know what's real and what's not. And a lot of that, I think that goes back to like his own self-criticism of like dealing with like, I need to make this perfect script. I need to make something better. The critics are, they're wrong, but I need to make something better. And that's, like I said, that is a dangerous thing when you're like, I disagree with you, but I'm still going to follow what you're trying to tell me, like saying this sucks, so I need to make something better. And that's, like I said, it just continues to devolve and devolve and devolve. And Adam's, grip on reality is slipping pretty clearly.
Yeah, it becomes a really vicious cycle. And then finally, when the script is complete, then he has to go get Kate and be like, guess what, Kate? I did it. But oh boy, are we completely out of the farm at that point, right? He is gone. He is from writing all these characters, knowing in his mind that he's killing people. That's how he sees it. He's like, I'm really killing people here. And I'm having to do it as a vessel for Big Baby. I have to do it, right? So he's completely lost his mind. And when he finally tracks her down at their
Well,
friend's house,
let's just talk about the ending because that kind of gets us to where we're at the concluding story. Go ahead. I'll let you tell. I just said let's talk about the ending because that's really where we're going here.
yeah, let's talk about the ending. So at the end here of Big Baby, Adam has completed the script. He did it. He did the thing. So now what do you get for that complete? You completed it. You get Kate back. Finally, I did it. All that damage I did, all of that stuff I did. Kate, it's okay now. I finished it. You're saved. Congratulations. No, the fuck not. That's not how this world works. And Spider One understands that. And I think he understands, he goes, you can do real damage if you let your creativity get the best of you. So when he finally comes to confront Kate, he's got the big knife gash in his face. He's wild-eyed. He's got a knife. He seems like he's going to kill everybody in the room, but he's like, "No, I swear I'm fine." It's like, yeah, you've set up a situation where your partner, a very supportive and good person, can't in good conscience go back to you. You've gone too far. And so that's a little bit of a cautionary tale that Spider One weaves into it, no pun intended, to say, like, be careful how far you go down that process. And you could lose people in the process. You really can, even though the intention was never to lose them to begin with. I feel that pressure as a creative. I go, oh, I have to do my job well, or I don't make money. I stop getting hired, and people don't hire me, and then I can't feed my kids. I understand that pressure. But if you let that pressure get the best of you, you can really lose people in the process. You have to find the balance. And Adam does not find the balance. And Damon, the thing that happens next, I was like, oh shit, here we go.
He traps her in a bedroom, locks the door, and he's like trying to plead with her, like, I'm good, as he's holding a butcher knife and like bleeding. And she's, I'm totally good. And then out of nowhere, Big Baby kind of walks out of the closet and he's like, no, no. And then she turns around and she's like, what the fuck? And Big Baby, turns on her, and then we hear all the screaming, crying, whatever. And then Adam's two friends, the one he went to college with and his girlfriend, kick in the door, and they find Adam sliced and diced on the floor, and there is Kate covered in blood with the butcher knife in her hand. And that's how it ends. And that's literally how the movie ends, is like, Adam's dead and now Kate is holding the butcher knife. What did you interpret that as, with Kate being the killer?
I think it is all about that idea that, like, you can poison the well with your obsession, right? Like, he didn't just hurt himself in the process, he hurts Kate in the process too. She's going to be a victim of this, even if, like, her friends could easily say, oh, it was self-defense, he came in here manic with a knife and he probably attacked her in there, we weren't in the room with them, we're siding with her in the story. It's still a traumatic event. The man that she loves is now dead, and she saw Big Baby, right? She saw the manifestation, she saw that it was real. She's like, oh fuck, this is all real. You can do long-term damage to people, no, even if you make it right in the end. And that's how I interpreted all of that. I'm like, yeah, the damage is done here, the damage can't be undone.
Your psychosis, your manifestation, your mental problems can bleed onto the people around you. It just sounds very much like a kid. Like I said, I was raised by a couple of addicts, and I know that the shit they went through and the shit they did when I was a kid absolutely bled over onto me. And I'm still, probably all these years later, 40 years later, 30 years later, still dealing with it. I know I am. But a lot of people don't recognize that. But that's the reality. When you have trauma, when you have psychosis, when you have issues, it will bleed onto people around you, whether it's your kids, your husband, your wife, whatever it is. In this case, it's the spouse, it's the girlfriend. Everything he's been going through has just finally bled over onto Kate, and now they're making like a literal manifestation of that, where she has apparently killed him, whether it was self-sacrifice, whether it was self-defense, whatever it was. But the reality is, and I agree with you, the story ends with the idea that Adam may have died for his own creativity, for his own art, but that doesn't mean the people around him aren't affected by it. And that includes the person who loved him the most, who supported him the most. She took the brunt of it. And now she's going to deal with the bullshit because he died and basically left all of it in her lap. And now she's got to deal with it.
Yeah, it's grim. I like a good grim ending.
Yeah. Now, did you watch the quote unquote post credit scene or whatever you want to call it?
I did, but you're gonna have to refresh my memory. It's been a few days.
So we go back to our podcasters, our blood soaked podcasters.
That's right. Oh yeah.
And they're talking about how much they love the new movie. They're like, oh, you know what? I really like that new movie. I can't believe it's the same guy that made this other piece of shit, blah, blah, blah. And they're walking along and they're talking like, were we too harsh? Were we too mean? He's like, no. And then Big Baby shows up and hacks the blood-soaked podcast guys to death. And that's how the movie ends. It's kind of like a funny, cheeky ending.
Even though I am a podcaster, it doesn't mean I'm going to be in solidarity with a couple of dipshits, right? Like they got what was coming to them. If anybody in this movie needed it, it was those two podcasters who were so obnoxious. I can't imagine listening to a podcast like that.
Those guys reminded me of like the issues I have with like influencers. You know what I mean? When they're just like, right, doing everything possible to get attention without actually doing anything that would like add anything to the world whatsoever. They're just like, watch me do this. And I'm like, whatever, dude. I don't care to watch you do this. Like it doesn't do anything for me.
No, it really doesn't. The whole trying to get attention through negative commentary, I'm not impressed.
But that was, like I said, that is Spider-One's like, let's take all the negative comments and put it into one podcast, and that's what ends up being these two guys. And so,
yeah, I'm sure some of it was targeted to influencers as well and all that stuff. But he's like, you know what? The easiest way to do this is just show these two dipshit podcasters.
And by the way, I'm not defending the negativity, but I will defend this real quick before we get to categories. I don't know if you saw this story a couple months ago where Halsey, the musician Halsey, like flipped out on some music reviewer who reviewed her album from like 2 years ago, and she like unleashed a really scathing like, "Who are you to say this? And what are you doing?" Blah blah blah. And I read the review. I like it's not Halsey. I'm not knocking Halsey. It's just not the kind of music I listen to. But like I read the review, and it was just like basically like it didn't live up to her standard, and it just wasn't as creative as the other. It was a thoughtful review. Sure. It wasn't like she fucking sucks and what happened to her. It wasn't that. It definitely wasn't that. And I when they named the guys, like I've seen his reviews before on TikTok. I run across his page before, and he always names bands I never fucking heard of. I'm like, yeah, that's but like. I saw the review and I was like, it's not like, he's not just like, man, she fucking sucks. She's ugly now. Yeah, like, she's ugly now. It wasn't that. And my thought, like, I was defending him over Halsey. I'm like, first off, this is from 2 years ago, and now you're all upset about it. But two, like, there's plenty to get upset when people give you negative reviews. I understand that, and you disagree because you put your heart and soul into whatever you're making, whether it's a movie, an album, a poem, whatever. I get it. I do. I get it. It hurts and it stings and you want to lash out. But what does that really add? Like, what does it really do? You're not changing the opinion. He listened to the album and he didn't like it. Okay. And he gave you a reason why. Now, like I said, honestly, like being honest, he gave a very thoughtful review why he didn't like it. You disagree. I understand. I understand why it hurts because you put your heart and soul into this thing. Probably spent like a year or 2 years building it, and then in 1 30-second review, you kind of tears it down. I get it, but that's kind of what going back to my original point about not listening to the comments. It means the world to you, and you're proud of what you did. You spent 2 years building this album, making it perfect, getting it all recorded, whatever, putting it out in the world, and you love it. What does it really matter what he thinks or what one person in the world thinks? You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of my point. And so, like, I'm just giving advice as best I can because I know, like I said, that's why I don't read the comments because it will consume you. It's done it to me. I've done it. So like that's what I'm talking about. Like just I know you can't shut out everything, and I know you can't, you can't ignore it all. But do your best. Like if you're really gonna go after somebody for saying your music sucks, your album sucks, your script sucks, your movie sucks, the blood soaked guys are the ones you go after who literally are not adding anything to the discourse. They're just saying, "Oh, your movie sucks. I hate it. It was the worst thing I've ever seen. I want to kill myself. I want you to kill yourself because it was so badly written." Okay, great. Why? Now they never tell you that. They never tell you why. They never actually get into like the reasons why they dislike it. That's the guy you're like, you know what? Fuck that dude. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's the dude who you want to be like, fuck that guy or whatever. I get it. But the guy who actually goes through and be like, you know what? The lyrics just didn't hit the same way, or the writing just didn't seem as tight as your last movie. Whatever. At least they're giving you reasons why they didn't personally like it, and that's okay. I'm sure I know we have critics of this podcast.
Oh,
I try
we
not
do.
to. I try not to read that either because that'll devastate my confidence. But that's kind of the point. Like, if you're just like, you know what, man, like you guys meander on, you talk too much technical bullshit, you talk too much about the writing process, and I just want to hear about, like, is it a good or a bad movie? Should I go see it? And you want a simpler version of a review. Cool, I get it. I'm okay with that. That's just not what we do here. But yeah, if you're just like, man, you guys fucking suck, and I hate your podcast, and I hate the sound of your voice, and I want to murder both of you, and you should die, and whatever. Great. I'm not really going to take offense to that because you're not telling me anything I'm doing wrong. You're just saying you don't like me. Okay, great. Whatever. I'm like that. Whatever. Whatever. But like, just all I'm getting at is like, be aware of who you're listening to and why you're listening to their commentary.
Yeah, I would encourage people to not support people who just shit on things. Like, I understand that, like, sometimes people really like that. It's like almost a stress reliever to hear somebody else shit on something, but like, it's still negativity. And I feel like negativity doesn't help. It never helped me. It never made me feel better. I never in my life was just like, yeah, when that guy's, really laying into that piece of art, it makes me feel better. Like, nothing about that actually makes me feel better. But if I hear real constructive criticism, real interesting breakdowns, even they don't have to be as long as this podcast. It could be somebody who does it in a minute on a YouTube short. That goes a long way. I learned something. I gained something from it. To me, being constructive is much more important than being outrageous.
And listen, the reality is negativity sells. It does. I mean, I know this
It
from my
does.
own personal experience. People are like, why don't you write more positive, upbeat stories? It's like, because no one cares. Like I've said that publicly. Like, I wish I could write nothing but positive, upbeat stories and heartwarming stories. But when I do those stories, they bomb. And then I do the story of the guy saying, fuck this guy. I hate him. I want to punch him in the face. People are like, oh, I can't wait to read it. That we live in a world where negativity sells. On this podcast, we just don't do it. We're just like, it was
Not
like
really our thing.
we had that one review, that one commenter say, "Why do you review movies you don't like?" Well, we review everything. We don't just go out of our way to review things we don't like. But yeah, like that's kind of the point of a review podcast.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if anything, I hope that what people take from our podcast is that we are able to, I think, be more well-rounded about movies. Like, it's not all black and white here. If a movie really didn't work for us, we can tell you why it didn't work for us, and we can also tell you the things in it that did work at the same time. And then it just allows the experience to be more fruitful. So I don't think I've ever sat down and watched a movie for this podcast and gone, I have completely wasted my time. I never feel like that. I always feel like being constructive and thoughtful about stuff actually adds to my personal experience. That's just me.
Now, there have been times where I feel like I wasted my time, but I still review it. Anyways,
Halloween ends, are we talking about?
we're not going to mention names. Let's get into some categories, Patrick, and let's kick things off as you do each and every week here on the show, and let's talk about best performance. Now, this, of course, is a smaller film, very small cast, and obviously indies, so we're not dealing with, there's no Meryl Streep in this cast. So, Patrick, who gets your best performance for Big Baby?
My best performance goes to Brandon Scott, who plays our lead, Adam Lewis. There are times when this man has to break down. He really has to go crazy and go for it. And so I gave him best performance for those moments because I try to put myself in the shoes of actors all the time, and I just go, what would I do if I had to be in this position and act this way? And I think Brandon did a good job with that stuff.
Yeah, I thought he was really solid. Like I said, you're seeing this entire movie through his point of view, and so he has to kind of carry a lot of the heavy lifting of the emotional scenes, the terrifying scenes. Even like where it's almost like he's almost in a trance when he's writing scenes, when he's just like writing out murder scenes, and he's just kind of like, kind of
Yeah.
doled out and doing it. Yeah, he does a really, really good job. For me, Patrick, I went with Chrissy. I went with Chrissy Fox. I thought she did a tremendous job as the supportive girlfriend. And boy, I tell you what, she bends over backwards to support this dude every step of the way. And boy, does he not help her out much in this movie, in terms of like being like, yeah, you're such a great girlfriend. But yeah, like I thought she did a tremendous job of playing that like perfect supportive girlfriend, like doing everything. You're watching her, you're just like, my God, like I would have given up a long time ago, and she's just like, it takes her she gets her to a really really long point before she reaches the breaking point where she's like, we need a break. But I thought Chrissy Fox did a tremendous job in this movie.
Yeah, Chrissy always comes to play, man. I appreciate it. She also co-produces this movie. She does a lot of work on behind the scenes on it. Very, very hands-on filmmaker herself.
Yeah. Next category, Patrick, let's talk about MVP. And we have the same MVP, so we might as well just talk about it. Who gets the MVP for Big Baby?
Our MVP is Spider-One, writer and director, and mainly it's because I feel like he's really putting his heart on his sleeve in this movie and showing the frustration that he has with the creative process on both sides of it, not just outside noise, but inside noise too, because that's a very real thing.
When we did Allegoria, which is a anthology, it was we gave it a pretty positive review, but it still got like those weird moments in the movie where you're like, we understand we're like the entire like you're not gonna find the entire wide audience is gonna be like, oh, I get what he's doing here. This is just a very understandable movie. I think what Spider One really achieved with Big Baby is he made a mainstream movie. Like this is a movie like I like it's getting a wide release, and I'm like, yeah, it should. Especially if you're a slasher fan, because this is exactly what I'm talking about. This is the kind of new age slasher movie we should get, where it's not just the traditional, killer coming for revenge movie. There's a nuance to it. There's something more to it. There's the layers to this movie, and I really like that. To me, this feels like Spider One's most mature movie. You know what I mean? And kind of reminds me of like when you see a filmmaker like get it. Like, okay, I'm gonna
Hmm.
make a mainstream movie and I'm going to make it appealing to a wider audience. And you're watching this like, yeah, this is this is a movie where everyone could watch this and enjoy it, and there's a real story here. So I think this is almost like watching Spider One kind of graduate to that next level of filmmaking, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Next category, I hate to do this to you, Patrick. Next category, we also have the same answer. I'm just not going to change it because it was so cool. Next category, best gore/best kill. Now, a lot of this we got to remember in the second half of the movie when he's writing the actual slasher movie, we just get kill after kill after kill, and they're all pretty good. What's your best gore/kill, which is also my best gore as best kill? And by
I
the way,
called
this
it.
is not planned. I did not plan this.
No, we didn't plan this out at all. But my favorite kill I called mount the head on the wall, and Big Baby gets to, oh gosh, it's played by Chaz Bono. The character's name is Graham, and Graham is saying his prayers before he goes to bed, and Big Baby comes in and decides, you know what? I'm gonna kill the fuck out of this guy, and he proceeds to do so, cuts Graham's head off and mounts it on the wall where the nail was, where the crucifix was on the wall, and puts that up on the wall instead. I just loved it. It was just a nice touch. I feel like I'm like, man, for all the slashers I've seen, I don't really remember seeing a scene like that before. It just felt really original.
So let me I don't want to ruin what you just said. He takes a cross off the wall and stabs Graham in the head with it and then cuts
Right.
his head off. To Graham's point, when he's praying, by the way, I want to say, he says, I want another season of Battlestar Galactica. Graham, I'm right there with you, buddy. I wish I could get there to season that show, too. It's an incredible show. But yeah, he stabs him in the head with the crucifix, kills him, and then cuts his head off, and then puts the cross, which is still sticking to his head, and the head onto the nail. So I thought it was a kind of like a interesting, here's your cross back, just not in the same place you had it before. But I thought it was a really cool scene.
And I also want to give a shout out to the scene with Amanda, which is in the trailer. It's a pool scene. That scene, it seems like you're seeing what happens in the trailer. That scene goes to 11 once once that scene actually plays out. She gets chopped to bits. It's really, it's if you're a gore hound, that's your big scene.
Yeah. Next category, Patrick, remake, sequel, or leave it alone. So this is a pretty self-explanatory category, but this is where we take whatever movie we're reviewing and we say, should they remake it, should they sequelize it, or should they just leave it alone? So when it comes to Big Baby, remake, sequel, or leave it alone?
I think you could leave it alone, but Damon, it's a slasher. It ends on a slasher note. And I'm like, I think Spider One has a situation here where he could make a slasher sequel of Big Baby and go bigger and badder every single time out and get more to the slashing, like how we were talking about earlier. Like, but it still is infecting a certain creative person and causes all this. The catalyst of these movies, creativity, is something that you can latch onto in many, many different ways. So there's a lot of potential for a sequel.
I agree. And you got to remember when you look at the vast majority of horror sequels from the 80s and even the 90s, like it's not the same writer in every movie. Like rarely do they keep the same people. These days, you do see it a lot more. You do see somebody kind of, attach themselves and they continue to work on sequels in a franchise. But yeah, think about that. Like think about the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. They pretty much all have different writers. Friday the 13th, different writers, different directors. Who's the original creator? He didn't even stick around past the first one. They care what was his name.
For which one?
Friday the 13th, the original Friday the 13th.
Oh, well, Sean S. Cunningham, he
Sean
came
S.
back
Cunningham.
eventually. Yeah, he came back eventually.
But yeah, so just like how, and it doesn't all have to be the manifestation of like reality blending into, or fantasy blending into reality. You can find different ways in, but it would be cool to see like what somebody else would do if they're like, here, we're handing you the keys to the Big Baby franchise. What would you do with it? And then just see how haywire the shit goes. So I think a sequel is possible. I think it'd be curious because I think, like I said, credit to Spider One. He gave us a creative way into a slasher story. I think it's one that could carry on.
Yeah, I think it is. Congrats, Spider One. You have a franchise now. Deal with it.
Next category, Patrick. Can we survive this horror film? Now, this is very interesting because we could actually put ourselves into a couple different places. We could be the podcasters. We could be the writer. Are you making it out alive?
If I'm the writer, I'm fine. I'll be totally fine. Yeah, I still fear a blank page. Don't get me wrong. I'm no workhorse by any stretch of the imagination, but I'll be able to get through the writing just fine without crashing out. So I know that part's good. But if I'm the podcaster, am I going to do okay? I don't know, Damon. There are a couple of movies out there. There's a few movie monsters out there, probably from Outwaters and the 30 Miles from Nowhere, who are definitely want a piece of me. So I think if I'm the podcaster in that situation, I don't make it out. So this is a 50-50.
If our lead character's name is David Gordon Green, I'm dead. There's no way I'm making out. It's just over. Like he's acting.
Big Davy instead of Big Baby.
Yeah, Big Davy is putting the axe to old Damon. Yeah, that's it for me. As far as the writer part goes, I think I'm going to be okay because while I absolutely run into writer's block and run into like that, self-deferential, criticism of myself, things like that kind of stop me from writing. And like I said, I'll be the first to admit, talk a big game when it comes to screenwriting. I don't have a lot of screenwriting done, just so, I need to do more of that. But I think I'd be okay because I don't allow it to like consume me in that way. Like I let it consume me in a good way where like creatively I want to like get it on the page, but not to the point where I let negativity just overwrought my life and I need to like, let that do, which is, I think this is a cautionary tale of like the dangers of allowing negativity to seep into your creative process. So I'm kind of like you. If I'm the writer, I'm okay. And cause I write, that's literally what I do for a living. Make me the podcaster, I think I'm okay most of the time, but if you be giving Big Davy, there's probably a good chance I'm not making out alive in this movie. So
I do want to see the You versus Big Davy movie. I think that'd be great.
Yeah, me and Big Damon versus Big Davy. It'll be a showdown. It would be interesting. Patrick, last category, is it scary? So when it comes to Big Baby, is it scary?
This movie is both psychologically and physically torturous. It does, to me, feel almost more like a horror movie than a lot of the horror movies that we talk about, because we tend to talk about the mainstream stuff, and the mainstream stuff at times is kind of appealing to a mass audience. I feel like this movie is really appealing to horror fans specifically and creatives specifically. So it feels almost more like a horror than a lot of the stuff we talk about.
I mean, I think the psychological aspect is scary. You know, they do a good job of, like I said, you're not really sure what you're watching. Is it reality? Is it not reality? And it is like a good psychological story in that way. But then you're dealing with just like a traditional classic slasher story with a killer. And there are definitely some good jump scares, some moments where oh fuck, and some brutal kills. So it's like I said, it's a good blend in that. Going back to my original point about the plot, which is he found a way in that is not your traditional way of doing a slasher movie, which I thought was very good, very creative. And I think it actually makes it scary because you're getting elements of both. You're getting elements of a psychological thriller, of a writer breaking down and kind of losing his mind. And you're also dealing with just a traditional slasher story. So it works really well.
It really does. Congrats, Spider-One, Chrissy Fox, the whole gang.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, Big Baby opens in theaters on Friday, August 7th. Check it out. Like I said, if you like to support movies in the theater, this is a good one to go. It's an indie movie, and it's worth your time. Like I said, I was pleasantly not that I went in not expecting it. When you watch indie horror, you're like, it can be good or it could be bad. You got to be honest about it. Like it can be pretty. It's hard to say when you're dealing with like small budgets and you know limited options as far as what you're making, but I think Spider-One did a great job with this one. So check it out in theaters. Big Baby opens in theaters August 7th. It is out there. Patrick, we're going to get out of here. Want to say a big thank you, as always, to everyone that tunes in the show. Make sure to check us out on all your favorite podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and, of course, over on the YouTube channel. Just search Rewind of the Living Dead, and you can also find us on our website, rewindofthelivingdead.com. And you can also find us on Patreon, patreon.com/Rewind of the Living Dead. $5 a month. Support your boys. Early access to episodes, exclusive episodes, bonus episodes, TV reviews, all kinds of cool shit over there. And when you pay one time, you're already getting access to everything. So check it out when you get a chance. Patreon.com/Rewind of the Living Dead. You got questions, comments, movies you'd like us to review? If you get a chance to see Big Baby this weekend, what did you think? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Hit us up anytime on email, rotlivingdead@gmail.com. That's rotlivingdead@gmail.com, or hit us up anytime on social media. Just find us on Twitter /X, Instagram, or Facebook. Just search Rewind of the Living Dead and you'll find us over there. And you can also find us on our own personal social media channels. I am at Damon Martin, and you are?
At Director Patrick.
And as always, want to say a big thank you to everyone that tunes in the show. We'll be back next week with another edition of Rewind of the Living Dead. Thanks for tuning in. We will see you then.
Peace.